Hello. Welcome to the In Love with Business podcast. This miniseries is titled Chief Sustainability Heroes and is hosted by Professor Paolo Tatiki and Melina Corvalia-Shore from University College London, School of Management. Throughout this series, we will talk to sustainability leaders from different organizations and sectors to learn about their sustainability journeys. We will ask them about their career paths, the challenges they encountered in implementing complex strategies of sustainable transformation, and what inspired them along the way. We will also ask what advice they would offer to aspiring chief sustainability officers. Enjoy the episode.
This episode, we have with us Sean Jones, Chief Sustainability Officer at Microsoft Germany. Microsoft is a global software development company that operates in 190 countries and employs more than 220,000 people worldwide. Sean has been in his current role of CSO at Microsoft since May 2023. Before that, he was the Managing Director of Digital Operations at Deloitte, where he worked with a lot of industries and helped them to basically transit towards a greener future. Sean, it is truly a pleasure to have you in our show.
Thank you. No, happy to be here.
Thank you. Welcome.
So, Sean, can you tell us a little bit more about your background and your path of how you became a Chief Sustainability Officer?
Well, it was a long time coming, I would say. I mean, I studied at Berkeley in California, a chemical engineer from training. And, after that, I went into the consumer packaged goods industry. So I worked for a company called Clorox in the United States, making cleaning solutions and all sorts of stuff. And, great company. I love it. But, part of the marketing and the goal was always get consumers to use more. Get, in most cases, mothers or women to think that they need to disinfect everything in the world. And that I thought to myself, well, I don't know if I was going to be in that area. But for personal reasons, my wife and I, who's German, moved back to Germany in 2001. And there I started working for BASF. So completely different kind of business to business group and all sorts of different functions and regions within that company, and saw a lot of how the bottom of the value chain really, or the start of the circular economy really functions. And then in 2015 left with the digitalization wave and had my own company, and then went to Accenture and then to Deloitte, as you just referenced. And then when I got the opportunity to join Microsoft, I bit hard because I've been thinking about and working in various aspects on sustainability since about 2005, as far as I can remember, at least. But sustainability was always just a part of a project. It was never really a complete transformation. There were topics such as how do we define or create circular products. There were topics of energy efficiency, and especially through my consulting activity, there was never a sustainability transformation project, not one. No company would ever invest in one. But I think that we're at the tipping point right now where you're into S curves, then the bottom of the S curve, where companies are really starting to understand and starting to invest. And so that's what led me to this role. And in my current role at Microsoft, I am almost solely focused on external activities. So we've done, and we can talk about that, I think, a lot of internal sustainability development at Microsoft over the last 10 plus years. But my role is really about supporting partners and customers with achieving their sustainability goals and trying to create, solutions for them to do that.
And what was the driver that pushed you in the direction of sustainability? What was inspiring you to become a CSO?
Well, I did write it on my LinkedIn page a little bit for those of you who, no personal advertising. I don't care. I don't have the best LinkedIn page, but I think there were two things. One, as an engineer and a chemical engineer, well, of kind of value chain management, or what we call mass and energy balances, was always in my mind. So I was like, how do we solve this problem? And effectively, the Earth is a closed system except for radiation coming from the sun. And so, that was kind of one thing that I was thinking about. The second thing, of course, is I have a big family, lots of children. So I'm concerned, about how they are going to manage their lives and how the world will be for them in the next generation after I'm gone. And so that was another big driver for me.
Excellent.
Great. So Sean, you mentioned so it sounds like your background is very interesting. You have many different dimensions, and you started in chemical engineering, you mentioned. How do you define the role of Chief Sustainability Officer, given sustainability in and of itself is also multidimensional? So how do you define the role?
For me, I think the role of Chief Sustainability Officer needs to be, it's not always is right now, but needs to be really the transformation leader for the company. I see it very similar to chief digital officers over the last kind of 10 years, in 2015, at least in Europe, but also in the United States, there was kind of this wave. And it's about defining not only the goals of the company and how, where you are today, where you want to be, and then what are the different measures you're going to get there. So that overall program management, I think that's the clear role. And many of those include not only internally focused activities for the company about what, products and services they make today and how they're going to make them much more carbon or water or waste efficient, but also what's a new product portfolio in the future that they're going to create. So that's kind of the way I think about the Chief Sustainability Officer. I think that today in the marketplace, people live that role very differently. I think it actually started a lot in the communications area, which was good. But now I think that, communications organizations within companies are completely overwhelmed with the amount of really engineering and program implementation activity that's required to implement. It's really changed over the last time. And that's not a statement so much to greenwashing, right? So we'll get maybe to that topic at some point where people talk about, companies are just using sustainability with the communications department as greenwashing. But it's really changing now to how are companies going to transform themselves. And it touches on all functions, right? And I think that makes the Chief Sustainability Officer role complex because it's about really getting the finance organization to understand how to report, but also then the research and development organization to understand how to create new products, procurement organization to figure out how to buy the new materials, manufacturing, supply chain, sales across the board. So when we talk with clients, with our partners about that whole transformation, it can be overwhelming, the role of the Chief Sustainability Officer. And that's, I think, one of the issues many companies face today.
Okay. And in your role at Microsoft, you mentioned how your focus is primarily external focused at the moment, working with partners, customers. So through your discussions, what do you see as being some of the biggest challenges? So maybe it is the digital transformation piece. But what are some of the biggest challenges that companies are facing?
Yeah, they're kind of multifaceted. I mean, from a Microsoft perspective, maybe I'll start there because it's what I discuss most and know about most is really, gathering data, right? So a lot of the work for sustainability right now is in defining kind of what their baselines are. How much carbon equivalent do you actually emit? What is your water position? What is your waste position? How are you impacting biodiversity? What's your land usage? Right. So a lot of kind of the concrete factors, and then beyond just environmental too. So Microsoft is very focused on environmental right now, and we have a very professional organization on that. But the definition of sustainability really expands to lots of social topics, such as how are you treating your own employees? How are you treating your suppliers? In Germany, there's this It's a good German law. It's a terrible word. It's called Lieferketten-Sorgfaltspflichtengesetz. So if you look at like the longest words in the world, this will probably be on the top 10 in the future. But what it's supposed to mean is that a company is responsible for its suppliers. And so you have to look and say, okay, my suppliers treating their employees well? What are the wages? Slave labor is a potential topic. Environmental impacts and health impacts to those people in all the different areas. So that is a regulation that's also come into the European frame in Germany as well. And so it's extremely important for kind of everybody to understand how that all works.
That's great. After the interview, sorry, go ahead, Paolo.
No, go ahead, Melina.
I was just going to say, after the interview, we'll ask you I'm not going to try to pronounce that word, but we'll ask you for the spelling of it, because that's a really good point.
And Sean, before you basically said that the CSO is a transformation leader, so building on that, what would you say are the critical skills of a modern CSO today, and how do you develop them, and how do you maintain them over time?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, actually. So I think that it needs to be a leader who is networked, right? So networked both within the company as well as externally. Which has lots of communications capabilities as well, to be able to explain the story, but also listen to what requirements are from the marketplace. And that can be in, external communications with investors or within, presentations that they're doing, but also internally then. So I think that's a big thing. And the second major capability, I think, will be program management, because it's just a very complex program I'm putting together in terms of defining a strategy, a vision, and then a strategy and a roadmap, and then really implementing on that program. There are all sorts of technical capabilities that are required, though. When I'm talking with my boss, Melanie Nakagawa, the Chief Sustainability Officer for Microsoft globally, she talks about it that really her team, including me, is a Swiss Army knife. And the idea that, there are all sorts of capabilities that you need, actually. So she's got PhD, sustainability professionals. She's got people like me that come from consulting industry backgrounds. She's got people that understand, Microsoft internally. So you need to put that entire complex team together and build off of them. But as the CSO themselves, they definitely need a strong networking communications capability, as well as a strong program management capability.
That's a really good analogy. Can you share with us an initiative that you're particularly proud of, that either you've helped implement, a sustainability-focused initiative that you've helped implement either with internally at Microsoft or perhaps with one of your partners?
I think that, maybe there are a couple that I would highlight. So, with clients, and I can't name the clients, but in Germany, then, we're already working with clients we're working with clients in the consumer packaged goods area, but not just on reporting compliance. Right? So a lot of companies are really worried about the new reporting regulations, but a number of these companies are really thinking one step ahead. And what they're doing is called product carbon footprints or product footprints, because they might include both carbon and water and waste, elements into that. And they're trying to already think about, how do we take our product portfolio today and look at those products that are high product, carbon footprint, and then phase those out and start to invent and develop and innovate on new products that would have, a lower carbon, water, and waste footprint, and to really transform that portfolio in an evolution. right? Because that's what companies need to do. It's not going to be we're going to sell the company and cancel all of our products, and then we're going to create this whole. It doesn't work that way in the real world. So they really need to have that detail across all of their products, and then start to say, we're going to phase these ones out. We're going to invest in these new ones, and then over time, over the next 10 years, and they start to get there. And we're involved in a number of projects to help clients do that already, even though the data set that we're using is very limited. So the reason for that is that those consumer packaged goods companies try to get data from their suppliers, right? Palm oil in Indonesia, or certain surfactants that they're sourcing from the United States. But none of those companies have developed the data either. So it's all new to them. So it's a very iterative process where they make kind of initial hypotheses, and we use factors and kind of analyses for the data to say, okay, this is what we think it is. But over time, we're trying to improve that. So that's one thing, how we're working with clients, and probably the most important thing. A second area that is really interesting is, of course, our innovation at Microsoft in innovative energy sources. We've invested $1 billion in Climate Innovation Fund. We started about 3 years ago. We invested already about 700 to 800 million of that into many companies. These are, companies that are doing reforestation, but also, much more, and you'll see in my posts and others to the company, it's really about carbon capture as well. That's one of the critical elements that we're doing. One of the things, if you take a look at, Bill Gates and Breakthrough Energy, that they're also focused on. It's a separate company from our investment fund, but naturally there's a lot of discussion that goes on between the parties.
Okay, great. So in a company as big as yours, Paolo mentioned off the top, you have more or less more 220,000 employees worldwide. So as CSO, how do you go about engaging all employees who may or may not be necessarily directly involved with sustainability projects or have it in their title, but how do you engage people to become part of this important movement?
Yeah. Great question. I mean, I came to Microsoft, earlier at the beginning of this year because they were already motivated. So it wasn't a problem that I needed to personally solve, I would say. There are over 10,000 people that are within the sustainability community within Microsoft, and it's volunteer work, right? So they do it kind of in their time off. In Germany, as an example, we have over 100 that are really working on an active basis as champions, not only for product areas, but also for defining kind of ways to improve our sustainability footprint as Microsoft in Germany. And then also doing, projects, whether they're doing cleanup projects or supporting with education at various different, levels like K-12, as well as kind of the university level. So that was already there. I think we support it by just keeping the momentum, and we provide a lot of information and support and time. I mean, Microsoft concretely has a program not dissimilar probably to other competitors where we take, we give, personnel 3 days off for the year. They can do whatever they want to with. So it's an additional incremental 3 days of vacation. They can do whatever they want to with too. The normal work stuff I have planned with them. So I have co-opted all of these people into our regular meetings and talking about, Microsoft's solution portfolio, as well as different measures that we're implementing on a regular basis to keep them up to date on that. And many of them have taken over certain initiatives and are leading them themselves. So, the motivation was already there. I just need to create it. But I think it's an extremely important cultural element. You have believers and non-believers, though. So we still get, cost pressure and have to work with, moderate funds and have budgeting discussions and fight as sustainability to get our piece of the pie. That's definitely the case. But there are a lot of people there that are already motivated.
I imagine that's the case
Sean,
in many companies.
And Sean, I was looking at the books in my library, and I recognized a book that was published a few years back from a very good friend, the former chairman of Microsoft Europe, Ian Mulfate, and the book is called The Positive Leader. And this is a very nice book, and I want to connect it to the topic of sustainability. And so you spoke about how you engage employees, and the next question at this point is how do you engage the senior leadership team at Microsoft on the topic of sustainable transformation?
Yeah, so I haven't read the book. I didn't know about it, but now I will. You can send that to me also in the chat, please. Yeah,
I will. It's a nice book.
It's I think it's the same level of challenge, if not maybe more so. We have believers and non-believers, right? So the believers are there, and sustainability is an obvious fact for them, and they're really kind of driving and trying to figure out how they can use or misuse their budgetary responsibility or in order to kind of fund things. And we have non-believers. Sometimes I wouldn't say that's a bit crass of me to say non-believers, but people that basically think, okay, show me the money, right? Where's the business case? Is this a business for us or not? So they look at sustainability as a business opportunity, but not so much as a broader kind of program to how we save the world. I don't have a patent recipe for that though, so I can't solve that. I mean, naturally, working closely with the believers to help us, use their power, influence, and budget to help fund and direct activity. And I think that's had a big impact, and that's something we'll continue. And for the non-believers, trying to convince them, right? As much as we can, but you can't convince everybody all the time.
And how do you collaborate with other departments? So how do you basically drive sustainable change? With finance, with marketing, with supply chain, because this is as you said, is a massive, very complex journey of transformation. So it calls really for everyone playing a role in it, right?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, actually, because we're definitely not where we need to be, too. And I have this conversation with other companies as well. So it's a lot of sharing. I think in the consulting world, whether you're talking to the McKinseys or the, Deloitte, EYs, KPMGs of the world, we kind of all say that sooner or later, sustainability will be embedded into, the CFO organization and all the different operational organizations as part of daily business. But now it isn't. At Microsoft today, we have a highly mature organization developed around environmental sustainability. So it's led out of a group under the leadership of Brad Smith, who is the head of our what we call CELA, CELA. It's kind of our compliance and legal organization. And they then under him is Melanie Nakagawa. So one of my bosses, she's the global chief sustainability officer of Microsoft globally, and she has a whole team that basically defines a strategy, does the sustainability reporting on an annual basis. So we started that in 2020 and have produced 3 reports so far. We'll do our next one next year, and then she has within her group a lot of program managers that are identifying and working with other functions within the organization to drive our measures. So if you take a look at carbon as an example, right? So our biggest carbon impacts are in scope 3, as they call it. So, about our suppliers. So there's a whole supplier category management topic, how we source materials for our Xboxes and our Surface laptops. And then there's a whole group on how we build our data centers. And those 3 things are about 80% of our total carbon emissions, actually. And then we also have, group working on downstream usage and, largely Xboxes and Surface laptops and getting, not only renewable energy, but just the energy efficiency of those things. So that's within her BRIT. And she's expanded that now, not only from carbon to water and waste. So really tackling that. And for an American company that's not really impacted yet by European regulations, I think we're one of the leaders there. In terms of the social and other governance aspects, right now, there's no one organization within Microsoft that captures that together. So Melanie, with her team on the environmental side, works then with the chief HR officer as well as the CFO to kind of bring all of those topics together. I believe, as we're getting closer, I think that we're impacted by CSRD as a multinational organization in the European Union in 2027. I think we need to gather data for 2028. I have to check that one myself. But we're already thinking about how we're going to bring all of that together. And at that point, then you start to merge also the reporting, where you're reporting not only on sustainability as a separate report, but it becomes part of your overall annual report that needs to be audited, which ours is already audited from an environmental perspective. But and I think that change will really start to merge a lot of these competencies together. But that's where we're at right now.
It's great. You touched on there a few really important pieces in terms of like the importance of data collection, but also how it can also be very overwhelming for companies, especially smaller companies. So can you talk a little bit about what resources are most needed or most essential to help companies gather that data, and then also maybe talk to us a little bit about how your own team is structured. So when we think of human resources within sustainability.
Yeah, in terms of data gathering, I mean, it becomes a project similar to almost all of the digital projects that we've seen over the last 10 years. So, as people try to, look at manufacturing, supply chain, and other processes. So, the first step is really gathering the data on carbon emissions as an example. And you need to figure out where those emissions occurred from your own combustion, from purchase suppliers, from the suppliers that you're buying products for with embedded carbon, and so forth. And most of the data actually isn't available right now to clients, or from my perspective, clients, to any company that's doing that. And that happens by gathering Excel sheets. And, we as Microsoft, this is okay, not product selling here, but this is our position. We think it's a good idea, is that we created this standardized data model for a good amount of that. And so one of the first questions we have with clients is trying to figure out, okay, what data do you need? And we work with partners to do that. So consulting companies, right, in most cases, because we're not experts in sustainability and the regulations in most cases, but we do have the data model. And so the, consulting company works with the client, and they bring this is the data set that you actually need. And the client then has to go and search through that with the help of the consultant to get that. And then they do a match, and then they figure out what's missing. And then they start to either, improve the quality or create that data. In terms of organization, my organization is largely related to, there's a product development group. So it's a group that is really working on the product. So we're feeding kind of requirements in terms of what clients need and how they're developing that. And then I also have my kind of sales organization, to put it simply, which includes a lot of kind of internal Microsoft employees as well as partners that we're working with. And partners are a hugely important part of this right now, because the requirements are quite dynamic still within this space, because new regulations are coming out on a regular basis. Those regulations are not always completely clear, and then the partners need to really interpret those and then work with clients together. So those two groups, kind of the sales and partner side together with the product group side, are the main parts of my organization that we're bringing together to create better products to help clients with. In terms of then the internal organization within Microsoft, I think it's like I described. We have kind of a large program organization under Melanie's group to help drive different initiatives that are helping us to improve our carbon footprint, but also water and waste. That's not formally in my organization with my role in Germany.
Okay. Great. Thanks.
And Sean, out of curiosity, Melanie is reporting to who in the organization?
So Melanie reports to Brad Smith, and Brad Smith is the vice chairman. So he's, I think it's formally second in line to Satya, but he's part of the executive committee for Microsoft globally. Yeah, and Melanie reports to him.
Okay.
Very nice, because something that we have, I guess, learned with this show is that sustainability is organized in a very different way in different companies, and it's also, there isn't, I guess, it kind of a common I guess or let's say a best practice for reporting lines when it comes to CSOs. And you might have seen this summer there was a piece of research published in the Harvard Business Review by colleagues at Harvard Business School. They were basically trying to push this idea that CSOs should report to CFOs. The reason being that sustainability is more and more a topic relevant and interesting to investors, and CSOs being involved in roadshows, and at that point, it kind of makes sense that the sustainability function is close or under the finance function. What's your view on that?
Well, I think that's not wrong, right? I mean, if you're going to put it simplistically and you're going to anchor it somewhere, then it's under either the CEO or the CFO. So I think that's okay. The issue is that if you put it under the CFO, then they'll focus on reporting and controlling requirements, which are very important, right? So companies under CSRD need to include that in their reporting. That'll be a big activity. Then there are controlling requirements, which are kind of, delegated functions from the CFO organization into each of the business units to figure out, okay, this is what your plan is. This is how you're performing versus plan, and what are you going to do to improve that? But then there are a whole, if you look at transformation, people, process, and technology, the process part of it is somewhat covered by that. But the people part of it and the technology part of it definitely isn't, right? Because CSOs still need to make sure that everybody in the different business units and the different functions has an understanding of what sustainability means. And there's a huge lack, right? I mean, it's complicated too. And the sustainability organizations or leadership in the last years, there are a lot of PhDs that have come out and said, oh, this is how we're defining, greenhouse gas particle. And everybody's just like, oh my God, this is way too complex. Can you just simplify it? And it can be made much, much more. So I think that that's one element of making sure that everybody in the organization understands, just like profit and loss, right? Everybody's dealing with, revenue and margin and overall profit and capital, working capital requirements. Everybody understands that in business now, but nobody understands carbon, water, and waste, let alone social aspects. So that all needs to be part of it. And that has to be, the CFO will never do that, I think. That has to be a CSO role to really enable and empower and educate the organization. And then there's the technology aspect of it, which is always thrown again to the CIO, which is fine. But we have CIOs as Microsoft coming to us asking, I need a sustainability tool. And you're like, okay, fine. So what are your requirements? I don't know. I mean, I just need to comply with this regulation. You're like, okay, that's great. But this is one regulation. There are 10 others you need to comply with. It might make more sense to have a strategy first, because the data across all of them may be very similar. You got to think about how you're going to embed that in your operational activities and your operating model. So when companies come to us from all different directions, all we do is we try to refer them to a good advisor and say, you need to do your homework first before you buy any software, which is a terrible thing for a software company to say, but we figure it's probably the best time and money.
And Sean, we are recording kind of this podcast just before Christmas. We basically have seen world leader in Dubai and corporate leaders in Dubai for some time, for the past few weeks, discussing, I guess, our future and our progress towards net zero and climate action. Are you positive about where we are going? Are you kind of what's your take on the outcome of COP in Dubai? And kind of what type of a role do you see companies, bigger companies like Microsoft, playing in building like a net zero future?
Yeah. No, I'm positive. I'm a generally optimistic person, but I mean, on the one hand, we're not going fast enough to meet the objectives we've set ourselves in 2030, 2050. On the other hand, I think there's still a large awareness. I mean, in Dubai, we had more companies there than ever before. And that was a statement, right? It's not just government saying this is where we need to be, but it's companies that were there. We had, as Microsoft, also a big presence there, had lots of very fruitful meetings that we're following up with. I understand some of the criticism from some organizations, some companies that say, well, yeah, you can't let an oil-rich country like the United Arab Emirates or Azerbaijan decide on these things in the future. I think that's absolutely wrong. I think that these are the countries to convince, right? Europe is already working on the way. I mean, whether Germany does nuclear or not, those are.
I fully agree with you, Sean.
Yeah. So, those are small things, not small things, but I'm just like, I don't get too worried about that. We're all motivated, but getting Dubai, Baku, Azerbaijan to agree to these things is a huge thing, and pushing out that presence there. I mean, I'm highly dissatisfied, and Al Gore made the statement as well. Not that I know Al, but he made the statement, that major oil companies need to do much, much more. And if you look at the IMF report that says 700, billion in renewable investments, but 7 trillion in fossil fuels investments. Okay, those are wrong numbers, right? Those need to change. But I think the best way to do it is to attack the bull head on, and then go to places like Dubai and Azerbaijan and meet with those colleagues and have the discussions with them. So we're definitely not on track for our objectives, but this is something that corporate world is used to, right? And I don't know, the governments sometimes, I think people miss this. They're like, we're not on track, and that's bad. I get it, but corporations are always setting themselves goals and never meeting. I mean, we're very used to this fact of, okay, let's set ourselves aspirational goals and we try to get there. So when we're going to these meetings, we're like, okay, there's a lot of problems here we need to deal with, and we'll get there step by step. But the fact that they were there on site, I thought was significant.
Fantastic. And Sean, speaking of aspirations, I believe this episode could be watched or listened by maybe young graduates who are, for example, considering a career in sustainability, maybe dreaming to become a CSO one day. So what is your advice to them?
Don't study to be a CSO. The role won't be there by the time they graduate, I think. So I honestly think that CDOs and CSOs themselves will probably disappear. Sustainability needs to be an embedded part of any of their curriculum. So, still study to be an electrical engineer, a chemical or a mechanical engineer, or a business leader, or a philosopher. I don't know. But add in sustainability in there. How does our impact on, our planet Earth, from an environmental, social, governance perspective, how is that part of what you're doing in the future? Especially investment bankers, they definitely need to study sustainability. So that was my statement.
Thank you, Sean. It was really a pleasure to have you in our show. Congratulations for the work you're doing at Microsoft, and thank you for your kind availability.
Yes.
Thank you,
Thank
Paolo.
you.
Thank you, Melina. Wishing you guys stay and healthy. Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed this discussion, we invite you to like and share this episode on your social media. Enjoy the rest of your day.